a little bit more about Kulliwari art? Like, we'd love to first understand a little bit more about your business and what it is that it does, and if you wouldn't mind just giving us an intro.
Yeah, well, Kulliwari art started from uh, early or late 1990s, sort of like that. I came out of the bush and I was a bit rough around the ridges. And my wife Jo said, "Well, paint." So my uncle sent me some drawings. I learned how to cut didgeridoos with my dad, painted a few, and then I had to learn how to go and sell it. So I went in economic development. I was a bit shy, and Jo would go with me, and then I would have to talk to people, which I never used to do much. And then I started to build a business. So I went from there to going to markets. Then I got offered to go to Singapore, Brunei, with the Queensland government. And then I was offered to go to Malta. And then I went to Singapore again. And then I went to an exhibition in Brunei, and then had an exhibition in Switzerland. And then, so it's opened my eyes up of the world and opened my eyes up of people that were interested in the Aboriginal art. And so Connolly art is Connolly's Kullilli, which is my father's land where I was born on. And my mother's land is Munda-gutta Kulliwari, and that's northwest of New South Wales. And I come from southwest Queensland. So under our dreaming and our songs and our storylines, I connect to those countries in the Central Desert. In Pintinjara is the Central Desert people of the Kullili is a word of the Pintinjara, meaning to listen. And then we have connection to the southeastern Aranda through the Rainbow Valley and the stories and the wedge-tailed eagle and the snake that came from South Australia and created the waterways. So Munda-gutta is who I am, the creator, and the man who they know you before they see you. So everybody knows my stories, they know of me, they know of Connolly art, and here we are today after 25 years.
Incredible. And when you put it summarized like that, it sounds like, it all fell to place eventually, but I'm sure it was quite a challenge for you as well, since you've established a business which was, of course, so closely connected to your own identity and your heritage. You mentioned just now in the first part of your answer, you mentioned that you were somewhat surprised to see such a global interest actually in the Aboriginal art, and you were positively surprised, I think. Can you tell us a little bit more about whether do you think that was always actually the case and it just never reached the rest of the world? Or do you really believe that an awakening came on maybe in the last sort of 10 to 20 years where people started appreciating, the necessity?
In the 60s and 70s, it became more prominent in the Central Desert people because people were seeing the style of the Central Desert people with the dots and their stories. So they created from the dirt to canvas. And then they told their stories of the desert. And then the mali, which is how we could leave our bodies at night and fly across our land and come back. And in the morning, we could draw country.
Mm-hmm.
So one day they took a man up from the desert in a plane. He'd just done a painting. And it was exactly what he'd seen from the ground. They flew him over in the plane. So it's about knowing your country and knowing you. So that was in the late 60s, early 70s. Mm. And that's when the Central Desert art became the number one in the world. So everybody started to go to Alice Springs to get their art. Arnhem Land was another one where people started to look at, East Arnhem Land, from Darwin. And then our smaller nations that were connected to these tribal lands, a few of our people started to paint and then tell stories. Yeah. And that's how we become to tell the stories, not from the dirt, but to put it on canvas and tell the story. So that's how it became in the 80s and then to the 90s. And then here we are now where Aboriginal art is copied by, and this is another thing with the problems with is the copied art because people see it now as a dollar. And it's gone from the creation, the stories, to tell the stories about our people in our country, to people are copying it put it on garments and shirts and then selling it. And now it's become globalized, a very multi-million dollar business, but probably 10% only go to the Aboriginal people. The rest are going to the coffers of the non-Indigenous peoples of the world who they see it as a dollar.
What do you think, Michael, the main reason is why for you as a community it's hard to be heard in these aspects? Like, why is it hard for you to gain rights to the things that are naturally yours, really, and that source from your culture? Is that, do you have an explanation for why it's so difficult to penetrate and make people much more aware of that fact?
Well, we've been going through this for the last 10 years, and the last 2.5, 3 years, it's come more prominent because one of our politicians said that they talk about money for Aboriginal people in the communities where art is their source of income.
Mm-hmm.
So now people are copying, as I said before, copying it and bastardising our art, but they haven't got a law, as they say, in this country to support Indigenous culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still working with government and have been for 10 years. And I've been, or Joe and I were charged for defamation for naming Benjamin Wooster from Bairubi Art, who was taken by the ACCC and charged $2.3 million. He went to liquidation, started another business up, and charged us with defamation for naming and shaming his business. So we have the multi-million-dollar people who've been getting their art and artifacts done in Indonesia and China for 50 cents and selling it here for $10. And we make our own products and they won't buy us because the cost of our living in this country is so high. So, and Boomerang for wholesale is about $7 to $10, where they get theirs handmade and painted in Indonesia for 50 cents. So we've been trying to stop this, and this is where it's all come unstuck, that the money value for us is 5%, 10%, where them, they're 90%. So we've been working with government, and government says, yeah, we're putting people together now, copyright people, and we're putting this together. I said, speak to the traditional people. So they had a Australia-wide inquiry, and they had all the information of what's going wrong. Well, now they haven't found how to put it together to support our people.
Yeah.
And I said to him in Canberra, I said, well, how about putting me up on the committee? And I'll tell you exactly how it's going wrong. I'll tell you what laws you need to be. If it's not made by Aboriginal people of this country and Torres Strait Islander people, do not, and I said, do not make it saleable to the interested people, especially the tourists. And yes, Michael, well, when we organise our committee, we'll work out who we're going to put on it, and then we'll go from there. Well, that's 12 months ago.
Yeah.
So this is the problem we've got. It's become a billion-dollar business with 10% going to the Aboriginal people. If 10% lucky, and there's about 25 to 30,000 artists in Australia who are lucky to get 10 or 15,000 a year. And the rest of the money goes to the multinationals.
That's a frustrating fact to be confronted with. And that's a frustrating reality to be confronted with, and one that you fought against, not just in the arts, but on many levels of your people's rights in your country. How do you motivate the next generation to still practice the art and to still, live the traditions, if there's this sense of disenfranchisement that obviously is very prevalent, right? Like even in your own art being commercialized beyond your own gains. How do you motivate your next generation? Do you see that there is still motivation from them to say, or do they feel like, we give up anyways, none of this ever comes to us? Or how do you do that as a community?
Well, I've just went through a lot of stuff with native title on the Connolly, and the young ones aren't interested. Like, I'm passionate about being on country, walking every year on country and artifacts and finding new stuff and bush medicine. And I say to young ones, why aren't you interested? Why? They said, we can't make money out of that. I said, you can. But the young ones seem that they don't have that passion like I have. So I want to teach my children, I want to teach my grandchildren, but we're falling away every year because the young ones see mobile phones, they see, the way of the life of the young people. They don't see it as we see it from the old days. I'm 63-year-old, and I brought up on a stolen generation idea where mum and them removed from country. They lived in towns. They changed their identities so the governments wouldn't say it to us. Mum hid us boys because they didn't want us to be taken away when Dad was away droving. See, there's always this rejection and neglect by governments and that, as long as they want you to become assimilated. And the Assimilation Act of 1890, and our grandmothers were on that. And it's gone from there to what do we do today? And yes, your question is, can we work the younger ones to the next generation? Well, there is an odd one or two, but to go out on country, see, a lot of our people have been removed from country for 4 generations. So they wouldn't know what to look like on country. We were out there for native title, and they had no idea what they're looking at. Country doesn't read to them anymore. I read country. I live on country. I smell country. I listen to country. The young ones saying, for the native title for the mining, we're here for the $1,500 for the week. I don't care what happens. So we're slowly losing the race in that way. And the governments, that's why the governments won't do anything for you in the arts, because they're hoping that it's all going to slowly fall over.
It's just going to go away. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And this is the saddest thing, that I found over the last 30 years.
But then, maybe we also need to talk about particularly the fact that, you're in an art business, of course, art being such a strong expression of such an important way of capturing where we are as a society, where, where we came from, etc. And I think we have to, because you and I are having this interview and conversation right now in the midst of a global pandemic, I do feel like we must link these things up with each other and understand how this positions also all the wisdom that you're saying that your people are now about to lose if a next generation doesn't take interest, or like all the culture that's about to go away. Because it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like the current situation that we're facing with this pandemic actually calls for a lot of the things that we seem to have forgotten, or that we're trying to make the Aboriginal people let forget through this neglect, right? And it seems that a lot of that is actually highly relevant. A lot of that wisdom and that knowledge is highly relevant right now for us to rebuild a more sustainable kind of economy and more sustainable value creation. I just wanted to know your thoughts on this, Michael.
Well, if you go back to the human race, they walked the land, the animals ate the grasses and the trees. And this is how I've seen it, is you've taken away the trees, you've taken away the coal, you've taken away the oil, you've taken away the gas. The birds are not eating the fruit and spewing it back into the earth. The earth isn't regenerating. It's medicine for the earth. It's the circle of life. The animal eats the plant, shits the plant out, goes into the earth, regenerates, gives more plant, cleans the sky, cleans the earth, cleans the food, and in the ground we have coal. Now, coal is the greatest cleanser of water. When we were kids, they used to have charcoal and throw it in a water hole, leave it for a couple of days and clear the water. So the coal is the cleansing of the water in the earth. And the oil and the gas are the minerals that support this. So we have plants, the oil, the gas, the coal, the birds, the ground animals, and they all generate and turn it around. So when humans come along, they know what fruit to eat, they know what animals to eat, they know where all the vitamins come from. So what's happened is Mother Nature's had enough. She's given everything that could be acknowledged. So now there's no trees. Now the animals are sick. So they're spewing the sickness on the ground. The people are eating that. And here we are, a virus. So if we stop and we regenerate, leave the coal alone, leave the oil and the gas alone, go back on country, regenerate, regrow, repropagate, and make areas go. everything just goes round in circle, and there's nothing for the land. There's no trees to land on. There's nothing to land. There's nothing to do. And all of a sudden we got sickness. So now Mother Nature says, well, hey, I'll kill 30 million of you fellas. Wake up yourselves. Come back. Become friends. Become unity. Become humans. And regrowth the land, regrowth the trees, regrowth the animals, and we come back to life.